Great awakening, light lords, and grand rising to those who have not yet awoken. To know that we live in a world, a system that is against itself, and we need to elevate from that realm and get to a higher one, so that our minds can actually realize that we are a part of the collective consciousness, and in that collective consciousness, we are led by the Christ consciousness, or what people will call the higher self. And the higher self leads you to the balance between the lower and the higher self, which is the Christ mind, knowing both the left and right hemispheres of the brain, the positive and the negatives, charges of all things, the good and bad and everything, and fulfilling all of the polarities, unifying them and bringing neutralization. Neutralization meaning the balance between all things, and starting and beginning to eat from the tree of life rather than the tree of knowledge of good and evil. See, people think that the tree of good and evil needs to be eaten from because without it, you wouldn't know right from wrong. But what you fail to see is that who the religious call Adam and Eve, which are really even atoms, became out of balance once they started to separate themselves from one another. Well, not from one another, but from their mentality, the higher mentality of walking with God, or walking with the good of all that is in the Garden of Eden, eating from the different fruits, the different fruit trees, herbs, bearing seed, the meat that all beings should eat, by eating from the tree of good and evil. Now, it was said that there were two trees, or there were many trees in the Garden of Eden. It was said that there were many trees in the Garden of Eden. And the trees represent thought forms. Everything in scripture represents thought form. This realm is a realm of symbology. And there are many other realms and planes of existence that correspond with this realm, that create different symbols and different beings that the mind uses to manipulate itself through and experience the different realms. Now, the trees in this instance represented different thought forms or different subconscious programmings, different ways of thinking. And it was said to this even atom, to this being, to not eat from the tree of good and evil or the tree of life. Now, this was a thought that should have been actually rebelled against, because you need to eat from one or the other in order to actually exist without being in a state of dumbfoundedness, or being in a state of ignorance, without being in a state of ignorance. Now, in the tree of good and evil, you go to that tree because you wish to not be ignorant of such things. See, the snake came and was like, God told you not to eat from this tree, not to eat from these trees, or you will surely die. But that's not true. Now, these were two sides of the same coin, because death is only transformation from one form to another. Now, the snake coming to even Adam, telling them you will not surely die, that's a lie. That's half truth. But he was also speaking a half truth, because what God told them in this specific scenario, that they would surely die, was also the truth. So they were both speaking truths, but they were half truths. They were both half truths, which should be syncretized and integrated into the mentality of those chosen that wish to see the Christ kingdom, the golden era, the millennia, the new heaven and the new earth, the zero era. What happened was, after they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, after hearing the snake tell them, God told you that was a lie, God in this scenario actually went up to the heavens and went up to all of the other gods. And see, in this scenario, the word God was Elohim in Hebrew. In Hebrew, the word is Elohim. Elohim means Gods means it's plural for meaning many energies, many creators, many manipulators of this existence. And he went to them and he said, look, they have eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We must stop them unless they eat from the tree of life and become immortal. Now, this is why we should have rebelled against that thought of not even going to the tree of knowledge of good and evil or the tree of life. But now that we have eaten from the tree of good and evil, the Eve and Adam, we wanted more knowledge. Us not wanting to be ignorant in the first place is what led us to eat from the tree of good and evil, to know what's right and wrong, to know what's good and bad, to know what is good for us personally and what is bad for us personally. This is what we must figure out. This is the age that we're in, the age of information, the cyclical time clock, the four-dimensional space-time curvature, the mind of not wanting to be ignorant, but living in a state of ignorance because you don't know yourself. And the sacred text speaks, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. My people perish because they lack the knowledge. They lack the knowledge that will actually help them get up off their butts and seek higher consciousness, seek higher wisdom, apply the knowledge, the information to their lives. But see, now that curse is over. That curse is over and we don't lack the knowledge anymore. What we lack is the activity of that knowledge. Actually taking that knowledge and applying it to our lives on a daily basis so that we may know ourselves through the tree of knowledge of good and evil and begin to seek the tree of life, immortality. Because once we know ourselves fully, what is good for us and what is not good for us, and each person on this planet does know what's good for them specifically and what's bad for them specifically, then we will know how to communicate with each other. We will know how to communicate with each other, and we will know how to be around certain people. We will know what people to be around. We would know what energies to actually move ourselves into, move our conscious mind into, to experience and program our subconscious mind around us, creating the different realities that we coexist in the different planes and dimensions. People are too worried about what's above and what's below when we're in the middle, experiencing the balance. But your mind is out of balance, making this realm out of balance, because this realm is your mind. So what we must actually entertain our minds with, what we must actually focus on, is this realm. People are too focused, not saying do not focus on the heavens or do not focus on what's underneath the earth. But most of your attention should go to your fellow human beings and your fellow earth, middle earth plane. Your fellow animals, your fellow insects, your fellow fruit and vegetables and herbs. That's what our attention should be on. So that when we finish eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we can know that that's not all there is. And the next tree beside it is the tree of life. See, we left the Garden of Eden. We left the garden of consciously eating from certain thought forms and certain trees so that we may explore our minds and see what all is good for us and what all is actually bad for us, not knowing what was good and what was bad for us. But now we're coming to a time where we know for sure what is good for us, and we must apply that knowledge to our lives. And we know for sure what is bad for us by doing that. And the tree after that, after returning to the Garden of Eden, after leaving the Garden of Eden, because we ate from the tree of good and evil and we had to go out and explore, We had to go out and explore. See, this is what happened. They say we got put out of the Garden of Eden. But yes, we got put out of the Garden of Eden. But what you must realize is that God is your higher mind. So we didn't get put out per se. We actually left knowing that we would gain more knowledge instead of being in the state of ignorance. Living in peace at all time. Living in peace at all time, you are not witnessing all of the fullness of the cyclical energies of time and space. You are not witnessing what's good and what's evil. You're not witnessing any spectrum. You're always there just sitting, docile, still, not moving. You are not highly spirited or lowly spirited. You are nothingness. This is what we must remind ourselves, Christ consciousness. We were no thing. And the reason we left from that state of purity, of no thingness, was to experience everything, the everything that we are. That's why the Christ comes. That's why the Christ mentality comes and says, do all things in moderation. Know about the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish. The 2 fish being the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and the 5 loaves of bread being the senses, the 5 senses of the physical body that we exist in at this moment. And you being able to put all of these things together and see that you should let the dead bury the dead. You should let your ignorance fall off of you. Because the dead are those that are mentally dead. The dead are those that have no part in this reality at the moment. They are in other realities. The resurrection is when you when you die in ignorance, when you mentally die in ignorance, and you go back to the nothingness, not even knowing that you're ignorant, but then all of a sudden, since you already had that will for the knowledge, but you're in a situation where there's so much ignorance around you, the universe brings it to you. Your higher mind, the God, it brings it to you. So when God, in the Garden of Eden, God, our higher mind, told us not to eat from that tree, or we would surely die, it was basically saying, don't eat from that tree if you don't want to transform. Don't eat from that tree if you don't want to transform and become more through all of the trials and tribulations that you're going to have to go through, because death is a transformation. Oh, it can be scary. It can be very scary. The narrow path, the narrow road. It can be very scary when you're searching and seeking for this knowledge and this information, and you're going through these different obstacles and trials and tribulations to get to the tree of life. But what we must realize is that you have to focus your mind. Focus your mind. Those cherubim, after we left the Garden of Eden, those cherubim, those 2 flaming swords, is the line of the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. The Tropics of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, those cherubim and Nephilim, cherubim are angels of light. Angels of light. The main 2 lines on this earth plane are the Tropics of Cancer and the Tropics of Capricorn, and in between them is the equator. In between those lines of the equator and the Tropic of Cancer, and in between the lines of the equator and the Tropics of Capricorn, is the Garden of Eden. Those lines of light are the 2 flaming swords of the cherubim that were placed outside the gates of the Garden of Eden. This is my message for you today. We must get back in tune with nature. Start to eat from the tree of life. Start to actually study ourselves using the tree of good and evil. And when we come to know ourselves fully, connect with nature and get all of the answers. Get all of the rest of the answers. And teach your brethren and your sisters of the Christ consciousness that leads the collective consciousness. It is the information age, and now we have no excuse. We must get out. We must preach. We must teach. We must teach ourselves. We must constantly learn. We must converse. And we must go through trials and tribulations and go through many things with each other, learning each other and ourselves, so that we can come to this golden age knowing that we are the mind, and the mind is this realm. And what we should be focused on in this is this realm. Trying to astral project and lucid dream, that'll all come to you. You must allow. Lots of people in the New Age community are always talking about letting go and allowing the universe. But they're using this tactic, using this astral projection and lucid dreaming and all of these spells and hallucinogenic drugs. All of this stuff to escape the realm that you're in. You should deal with this realm. You must deal with yourself. Know thyself. Study your astrological energy. Study all of the science that connect with you. Neurology, biology, quantum physics. Study four-dimensional space-time curvature. That will let you know that this is your mind. And the mind rules all of this. And you are that. So know thyself. Christ consciousness. Know thyself. I am Jamashak, and I am here to live out and teach higher wisdom as an example for the collective consciousness. And I say today that we will allow the universe, allow our higher mind to guide us to the balance that we should be in. We will allow the universe. We will allow our ignorance to fall off and embrace the depth, which is transformation, which is only transforming from one level to another. And we will see that we are all one. Reflections. I love myself. Peace.